A woman actually accused me of time traveling just to steal her week-old grocery list. I wish I was joking. She literally hid in the bushes for 2 full hours, waiting to catch me buying oat milk, and then called the police on me. And that was just the start of the insanity. Wherever you're watching from, prepare yourself. This story is going to leave you so furious you'll want to throw your phone, yet trust me, the ending, it's so satisfying, it might just make you cry. It was Friday evening, around sunset. I was walking home from Whole Foods with 2 bags of groceries and nothing out of the ordinary, just my usual haul: 2 cartons of oat milk, 3 ripe avocados, a bunch of kale, organic chicken, and a few other things. The golden light stretched long shadows across our so-called peaceful suburban street. Then Karen Whitfield burst out of the bushes like a maniacal jack-in-the-box, leaves tangled in her hair, eyes red like she hadn't blinked in hours, and gripping a leather-bound notebook like it was state secrets. "Stop right there!" she shrieked, pointing at my bags with a trembling hand. "I know exactly what you've done." I stood frozen, and not because I was scared, but because my brain couldn't process what was happening. This woman was the HOA president, and now she looked like she'd been camping in the hedges for days. "Mrs. Whitfield," I asked, cautiously, "are you a broken bar okay?" She laughed, well, more like cackled, the kind of laugh that makes you wonder if it's time to call for backup. "Don't play dumb, Brandon Walker. I know who you are. I know what you're doing." She snapped open the notebook and began reading like she was in court. "May 17th, 5:52 Ma. Brandon Walker purchased 2 cartons of organic Valley oat milk, 3 avocados, 1 bunch of Cali Broken Bar." The list continued, detailed to a creepy level. "My grocery trip from last week," a Broken Bar recorded word for word. "What on earth?" "Today is May 24th, she growled, her voice rising. "And you bought the exact same items." "You're copying my grocery routine. That's theft of intellectual property." I blinked, trying to reboot my brain. "You a broken bar think I stole your grocery list?" But she wasn't done. "Don't act clueless, lawyer," she hissed, spitting the word like venom. "Tom at the store told me all about you. You think you can use legal tricks to rob decent people?" My chest tightened. Nobody in Willowbrook knew about my past life as a lawyer. "How did she?" "Mrs. Whitfield," I said carefully, "I don't know what Tom said, but I'm just buying groceries. Look, I even have the receipt." As I reached for it, she recoiled like I was pulling a weapon. "Don't move. I'm calling the police." "This is harassment and stalking." "Yes, stalking my shopping habits." By now, neighbors had begun peeking from behind curtains. Phones were out. Doors opened. Of course they lived for this kind of drama. Old Mrs. Henderson rolled out with her walker, eyes glued like it was the season finale of her favorite show. Then Tom Bradley, the manager at Whole Foods, came jogging up the street, breathless. "Karen, what are you doing? I told you Brandon comes in every Friday." That only made things worse. "Aha!" Karen yelled. "You admit it. You've been feeding him my shopping patterns. This is a conspiracy." She whipped out her phone and began filming me like she was launching a documentary. Evidence log, May 24th. Subject: Brandon Walker, caught red-handed copying grocery patterns. Note the guilty posture. At that point, I couldn't help but laugh. The absurdity had hit critical mass. But to Karen, that laugh was my confession. He's laughing. He thinks invading people's privacy is hilarious. Well, let's see how funny it is when the cops arrive. She dialed 911 like it was her big scene in a crime show. "Yes, this is Karen Whitfield, president of the Willowbrook HOA. I'd like to report a theft in progress. A lawyer is stealing groceries and threatening my life." That's when things took a darker turn. Mid-call, she looked across the street and spotted my security camera. Her tone dropped to soft, cold, and sharp. "Oh Brandon," she said, almost whispering, "I know you're recording this. And you know what? I know your secret. The one you've been hiding for 2 years. The James Miller case. The evidence you missed. The innocent man who went to prison." I dropped the groceries. Something cracked, probably the exit, but I didn't care. Karen had just detonated the secret I'd buried deep, the one that could ruin everything. That's when Officer Rodriguez pulled up, already looking exhausted. "Mrs. Whitfield," he sighed, This is the third time this month a broken bar. Then his eyes landed on me. Mr. Walker, Brandon Walker, you defended my cousin in the Martinez case a few years back. Karen's eyes lit up. See, he's a lawyer. Arrest him for theft, fraud, and grocery conspiracy. Rodriguez gave her a look like she'd grown an extra head, but he took out his notepad. Ma'am, he said, can you explain exactly what Mr. Walker stole? Karen held her notebook like a trophy and began what can only be described as the wildest PowerPoint presentation ever minus the PowerPoint. Officer, I have been tracking the shopping habits of everyone in Willowbrook for the past 3 years for security, of course, and this man has been copying mine exactly. She showed pages of notes, dates, items, even aisle numbers. Then Emma Mitchell, a young lawyer who lived 3 doors down, stepped forward. Officer, I've been watching this whole thing. Mrs. Whitfield has been hiding in those bushes since 3:30 p.m. I have video if you want it. Karen spun on her. You're in on it too. Another lawyer. This is a whole conspiracy. Emma stayed calm. Mrs. Whitfield, what you're doing might legally count as stalking under California Penal Code 646.9. That only enraged Karen more. Don't quote the law on me, little girl. I have my own lawyer. She pointed dramatically as a rusty black sedan pulled up. A man stepped out, rumpled and weary. Larry Goodman, attorney at law, he declared, his voice cracking mid-sentence. I remembered him. I'd crushed him in court 5 times. He was the kind of guy who Googled legal terms during trials. His face turned white. Oh, number, not show a broken bar. Then Mrs. Henderson shuffled forward with her tablet. I think everyone needs to see this, she said. The video showed Karen crawling into the bushes at 3:30 p.m. exactly as Emma had said. But the audio? That was the bombshell. Karen muttering to herself, he'll be back at 5:45. Just like every Friday. Creature of habit, a broken bar, just like Richard, just like my ex-husband. Silence fell. This wasn't about groceries anymore. Turn that off, Karen shrieked. That's illegal. Those cameras aren't registered with the HOA. Mrs. Henderson smiled. Oh sweetie, those aren't cameras, they're decorative birdhouses. Totally unmonitored, right? She winked. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then Tom finally spoke again. Karen, I need to be honest. You've been asking for customer shopping data for months. You said it was for a neighborhood watch. A broken bar. Karen went purple. Tom, don't you dare. We had a deal. In agreement? Officer Rodriguez asked, suddenly intrigued. Tom shifted uncomfortably. She wanted purchase records. Said it was to prevent theft. But last week a company, Datamine Corp., I think it was, came asking about the same data, Tom said, glancing around uneasily. They claimed they had a contract to broken bar with Karen. A collective shift in the atmosphere followed his words. This wasn't just a story about a paranoid HOA president anymore. Something deeper and far more disturbing was unfolding. Before anyone could respond, Karen's phone rang, slicing through the silence like a blade. She glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from her face. Without realizing it, she answered on speaker. A young man's voice rang out. Mom, I just saw a video of you online. What are you doing? I'm driving over right now and I'm bringing some colleagues from the FBI. We need to talk about Datamine Corporation. Karen dropped the phone. It bounced once before landing face down on the pavement. Number. No, a broken bar, she whispered, shaking her head violently. Matthew doesn't understand. I'm doing this for the neighborhood. I'm keeping everyone safe. Larry, the so-called lawyer, began inching backward toward his car, but Officer Rodriguez spotted him. Sir, he said calmly, I'm going to need you to stay right there. That's when Jessica Park, the HOA's vice president, stepped forward, holding an iPad. Well, since everyone's here, broken bar, she began, her voice tight with nerves but unwavering. I think the neighborhood deserves to know where our HOA fees have been going. She tapped the screen. $15,000. Last quarter alone. Labeled A, security upgrades. But there are no new cameras, no new patrols, nothing. Karen's face twisted. She lunged toward Jessica, but Rodriguez quickly blocked her path. Where's the money, Karen? Someone in the crowd shouted. Karen looked around, trapped. They knew something no one expected. She laughed. Not like before. This wasn't maniacal. It was hollow. Shattered. You really want to know? She said, voice cracking. "Fine, I'll tell you everything." She stepped forward. "After Richard left me for his 25-year-old paralegal, a broken bar after my kids stopped visiting, a broken bar after someone broke into my house 2 years ago, a broken bar, I made a choice. I wasn't going to be powerless anymore." Her voice hardened. "If that meant tracking what you all bought, a broken bar logging your movements, a broken bar knowing your patterns, so be it. Because order is fragile, and chaos is just one wrong step away." Rodriguez's radio crackled. He turned his head, listening, then looked up with a grim expression. "Mr. Walker." "Mrs. Whitfield, dispatch confirms that the FBI is en route. Datamine Corp has been under investigation for 6 months." Karen's knees buckled, and she dropped to the curb. Larry made a run for it but tripped and face-planted straight into Mrs. Henderson's prized rose bush. Sirens began to wail, but they weren't heading toward USA, they were coming for us. 3 matte black SUVs with tinted windows screeched to a stop. The lead vehicle opened. Out stepped a tall man in a crisp suit, briefcase in hand. He moved with precision and purpose. Even before he spoke, everyone knew who he was. "Mom," he said, voice low. One word, but it carried the weight of years of disappointment, disbelief, and exhausted duty. Karen tried to stand. She couldn't. "Matthew, sweetheart, a broken bar, you don't understand. These people, they're the problem. Him, especially." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "He's the ringleader. The whole thing was his idea." Matthew didn't even glance at her. He walked straight to me. "Mr. Walker," he said. "I'm Matthew Whitfield, Department of Justice." "I know who you are. The Miller case, I've studied it." My stomach twisted. "I'm not practicing anymore," I said quickly. He nodded. "I know, but you need to hear this. James Miller was exonerated 6 months ago. The real offender came forward and confessed." The world tilted under my feet. I reached out and grabbed Tom's arm for balance. "What did you just say?" Matthew's expression softened, just slightly. "Miller is free. The prosecutor in that case buried evidence. You weren't responsible for what happened, but there wasn't time to process the weight of it all because Jessica was now spreading papers across the hood of Rodriguez's patrol car. These are 3 years of HOA financial records," she said. "I've been documenting everything since I became VP. Karen didn't just misplace $15,000. She's embezzled nearly $200,000. The crowd erupted, shouting, gasps, outrage. Karen scrambled upright. "Lies. All of it. That money went to security. I've been protecting you." She whipped out her phone and began frantically tapping. "You want truth? Fine. John, so you're gambling? Yeah, I know. Smith, your daughter's shoplifting incident at Target? Henderson, your so-called birdhouse cameras? I've seen it all." But instead of panic, a broken bar. The crowd laughed. Mr. Johnson raised a hand. "The gambling? It's poker night with my brother-in-law. $5 a hand." Mrs. Smith rolled her eyes. "My daughter's 7. She grabbed a candy bar once. I made her apologize." Even Mrs. Henderson joined in. "And we've already been over my birdhouses, dear." Karen looked stunned. She turned to Larry, desperate. Tell them about the contracts, about Datamine." Larry looked utterly defeated. "Yeah, broken bar, I don't know anything about that. You paid me $500 to be your on-call attorney. I'm a tax lawyer. I don't do criminal law." Laughter rolled through the crowd, but Matthew wasn't laughing. "Mom," he said firmly, "we need to talk, now, about Datamine Corporation." Tom cleared his throat. "I can help there. 3 months ago, Karen offered me a deal, said a company wanted access to customer shopping data. She promised we'd both profit. I didn't agree, but I saved the emails. I was collecting evidence. Then today, when I saw her hiding in the bushes again a broken bar." Emma Mitchell looked up from her phone. "Datamine Corp is a Delaware-based company. They've been sued 12 times in the past 2 years for privacy violations. They're under federal investigation for selling stolen personal data." Karen turned pale. "No, a broken bar. They said it was for marketing. They said it was legal." Matthew shook his head. "You recruited people to spy on their neighbors. You sold illegally obtained personal information. This isn't some HOA drama. It's a federal crime." Karen sobbed. "You don't understand. After Richard left a broken bar after the break-in a broken bar, I needed control. If you know everyone's routine, you can stop bad things before they happen." It was heartbreaking, but tragic or not, She'd become the very danger she claimed to be preventing. She turned those wild eyes back on me. "You," she growled, "you think you are better than the rest of us. But I know about you too. I know about your visits to Miller, the money you've been giving him cash." I know. I felt exposed. The truth was, I had been helping James Miller financially since his release. He was homeless, and I'd felt responsible. But how could Karen know? Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. "She hired a private investigator, been following several people for months. I have footage. He drives a blue Camry plate 7XLN 429. He's parked just around the corner." Like a cue in a movie, we heard an engine roar, tires squealed, the Camry shot past, driver hunched low, one of the FBI agents spoke into his radio, and another SUV peeled out in pursuit. Matthew looked exhausted. "Mama broken bar, how many people have you been having followed?" Karen sobbed harder. 23, maybe 24, I lost count. He gave me weekly reports. I have far less a broken bar on everyone. The crowd went silent. No more laughter. Rodriguez stepped forward, expression grim. "Karen Whitfield, you're under arrest for stalking, harassment, and conspiracy to commit identity theft. You have the right to remain silent." But she wasn't listening. Her eyes locked onto mine. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You moved here, you broke the pattern. You'll all yours a broken bar, you destroy everything, just like Richard." As Rodriguez cuffed her, an old sedan rolled up. A man stepped out and my heart nearly stopped. James Miller, older, weathered, in second-hand clothes but unmistakably him. He walked straight toward me. "Mr. Walker," he said. "Heard things were getting messy. Thought you might need a witness." He held up a manila envelope. "That private investigator? He's been tailing me, too. I've got photos. Might help." And in that moment, the man I had once failed stood beside me ready to defend me. I couldn't hold back the tears. James stood steady, calm, a survivor, and this time, maybe broken bar, I wasn't the one who needed to fix things. After years of guilt and self-imposed exile from my former life in law, here stood the very man I once failed at, offering me help. "I never blamed you," he said in a voice just low enough for only me to hear. "The system let both of us down." Karen, now in handcuffs, witnessed this quiet moment with visible rage. "See, I told you, they've been in this together all along. This is a conspiracy years in the making." Matthew Whitfield rubbed his temples and muttered, "Mom, please stop talking. Anything you say can and will be used against you." Rodriguez was just about to place Karen into the patrol car when a new commotion broke out, this time not law enforcement, but the media. 3 news vans screeched to a stop. Cameras and microphones burst out as reporters swarmed the scene. "Is it true the HOA president was running a surveillance ring?" one journalist yelled. "Can you confirm FBI involvement in a data theft operation?" another called out. In the presence of the media, Karen underwent a startling transformation. Her tears vanished, her posture stiffened, and she adopted what I could only call her presidential persona. "Citizens of Willowbrook," she declared, addressing the cameras as if delivering a national address, "I've been safeguarding this neighborhood from unseen threats. Since my tenure began, crime has dropped 40%, because everyone's too terrified to leave their homes." Someone shouted from the crowd. The cameras swung wildly between Karen and the heckler, feeding off the unfolding drama. Emma Mitchell stepped forward, composed and professional. "If the media wants a statement," she said, "they should know that Mrs. Whitfield has grossly violated the privacy of every resident here. We had documentation of stalking, unauthorized surveillance, and the illegal sale of personal data to third parties." Larry, Karen's tax attorney, is still pulling thorns from his clothes. Tried to jump in. "My client hasn't been convicted of anything. This ice a broken bar, he faltered. "Defamation?" Emma offered helpfully. "Slander, perhaps, although technically, since we're speaking, not writing, I know what I meant," Larry snapped, though it was obvious he didn't. Then a microphone was shoved in my face. "Sir, are you the attorney she accused of grocery theft? Any comment on these allegations?" Something inside me shifted. For 2 years, I'd been running from my pasta, from who I used to be, but now, with James Miller at my side and my community under siege, the old instincts kicked back in. "My name is Brandon Walker," I said, staring directly into the camera. "Yes, I was a lawyer, And yes, I purchased groceries. The idea that this is considered theft is laughable. It's part of a disturbing pattern of paranoia that's plagued this neighborhood for far too long. The crowd murmured their approval. Someone even clapped. Matthew Whitfield stepped up with the precision of a seasoned prosecutor. "This is still an active investigation," he said. "Media, please step back." Then, addressing the crowd, "We know you have questions. There will be a community meeting tonight at 7 p.m. at the community center. We'll share everything we can." Turning back to me, he added, "Mr. Walker, I'd like to speak with you privately." "Mr. Miller, you too, if you're willing." We moved away from the chaos into Matthew's SUV. Inside, tinted windows gave us a moment of privacy. Matthew pulled out a tablet. "Mr. Walker, I need to show you something. My mother's actions go deeper than you realize. She wasn't working with just one investigator. She built a network." He revealed a diagram that looked straight out of a conspiracy theory board to Karen at the center, with lines connecting her to private investigators, data brokers, even some Willowbrook residents she'd recruited as informants. Mrs. Patterson from Oak Street was getting $50 a week to report on her neighbors, Matthew said. Even the teenage lawn guy Tommy Morrisota was taking photos of people's mail. She turned this place into a suburban East Berlin. I stared at the chart. My legal brain clicked into gear. "This is organized crime," I said. "It's racketeering, RICO charges." "She built a criminal enterprise." Matthew nodded grimly. "That's what we think, but it gets worse. Datamine Corp is just the start. They're linked to 3 other shell companies doing the same thing across the country." Mom may have stumbled onto something massive without realizing it. James Miller, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. "Is that why someone was following me?" "Because I don't have any data worth selling." "No," Matthew replied. "We think my mom was trying to connect Mr. Walker to criminal activity. She discovered your past and convinced herself that any lawyer who let a client go to prison must be corrupt. When she found out you were helping Mr. Miller financially, she thought it was hush money or evidence of guilt. She was trying to destroy me," I said, the realization hitting like a punch. "All because of her prejudice against lawyers," Matthew confirmed. "Stemming from my father, her ex-husband. He was a defense attorney, very slick, very successful, and utterly unethical. Left her for a younger woman and legally cleaned her out. She got nothing in the divorce. It broke her." Outside, I could hear the reporters winding down and Rodriguez directing traffic. But inside the SUV, the real story was unraveling. "What now?" I asked. "Now," Matthew said, "we bring down Datamine Corporation. But I need your help. You know the law. You know this community. Will you consult with USA unofficially?" I glanced at James Miller, the man whose freedom I'd failed to protect, yet who stood by me anyway. I thought of my neighbors, manipulated and betrayed by someone they trusted. And I thought about 2 long years of hiding from who I used to be. "Yes," I said. "I'll help." Matthew smiled for the first time. "Good, because tonight's community meeting, that's where we fight back. My mother may be facing jail time here, but Datamine Corp needs to go down in flames." Just as we were stepping out of the SUV, Matthew's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "That's unexpected. Datamine Corp just filed an emergency injunction to cancel the community meeting. They claim we're interfering with legitimate business operations." I felt that old fire spark inside me, the one that used to burn before a major courtroom battle. "Let them try," I said. "I might be retired, but I still remember how to crush an injunction." For the first time in 2 years, I felt alive again. The lawyer in me had awakened. The financial documents laid everything bare: receipts, bank records, and a shocking paper trail. Karen hadn't just embezzled $200,000. She had used HOA funds to hire private investigators, purchase data analytics software, and even subscribed to a facial recognition service. Jessica revealed that Karen had already signed a contract for installing facial recognition cameras at every community entrance. The installation was scheduled for Monday. The room erupted in chaos: shouting, arm-waving, disbelief. The live stream viewership spiked to 75,000. That's when I noticed something off. In the back row, 3 people in suits sat motionless, unaffected by the uproar. They were whispering, jotting notes, and one typed furiously on a laptop. I nudged Matthew. "Datamine Corp?" He nodded. "Lawyers, They're here to intimidate. Right on cue, one of them rose. "Excuse me," she said, her tone like ice. "I'm Linda Patterson, Chief Legal Counsel for Datamine Corporation. This meeting is broadcasting slanderous claims about our company. We demand you cease immediately." All eyes turned to her. The tension thickened. Jessica Park didn't back down. "Ma'am, we're reviewing our HOA's financial records. If your company appears in them, that's not defamation, that's documentation." Linda's expression hardened. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. Datamine has resources that can bury this community in lawsuits." That's when I stood up. I hadn't planned to, but I couldn't stay quiet. "Actually," I said, raising my voice to reach the entire room, "I think you are the one who doesn't understand who you're dealing with." A hush fell. I walked forward, every eye in the room fixed on me. Old courtroom instincts kicked in. "My name is Brandon Walker. I live here, and yes, I used to practice law successfully." Threatening a neighborhood meeting with legal action isn't just unethical, it could be considered criminal intimidation. Linda narrowed her eyes. "We know who you are, Mr. Walker. You're the lawyer who let an innocent man go to prison. You really want to wade into this?" It was a low blow meant to hurt, and it did. But I'd been hit worse. "Yes," I replied, "because that case taught me something. Staying silent in the face of injustice makes you complicit." I turned to face the crowd. "Let me be very clear. Your company has been purchasing illegally obtained personal data, violating federal privacy laws, and now you're here trying to scare people into silence. Everyone in this room is a potential federal witness. Every threat you make counts as obstruction." The room exploded into cheers. Someone began chanting, "Brandon, Brandon." The live stream audience surged past 100,000. Linda Patterson had gone pale. She turned to whisper with her colleagues, then addressed the room one last time, "We'll see you in court." But before they could leave, FBI agents stepped forward to block the exit. "Actually," one agent said, "we need to speak with you regarding those threats. And we'll be taking your laptops." The Datamine lawyers looked like they'd bitten into lemons as they were led away. Cheers erupted again, celebrations, hugs, high fives, but I wasn't finished. I turned back to the group. "Listen to me, this is far from over." Karen Whitfield was just one cog in a much bigger machine. Datamine Corp operates in 50 cities. They thrive on fear, on mistrust, on dividing neighbors. They profit by pitting us against each other. I pointed at the crowd. "But this is what happens when we stand together. When we refuse to be intimidated, we win. That's our power." The words came from somewhere deeper. 2 years of silence breaking wide open. Jessica called for a vote, Karen's immediate removal as HOA president and a lifetime ban from holding any position. Unanimous. Even her 5 loyalists raised their hands. Next came votes to recover the stolen money, dismantle all surveillance equipment, and enact strict transparency reforms. Again a unanimous. Just as the meeting was winding down, the doors burst open. Karen Whitfield stood there, ankle monitor blinking, hair disheveled, eyes blazing. "You think you've won?" she shrieked. Behind her, a confused local news cameraman scrambled to keep up. Apparently, Karen had invited the press herself. "I have dirt on all of you," she screamed, brandishing a tablet like a sword. "Johnson, you faked your tax records. Smith, you run an illegal daycare. Henderson, your son grows pot in the basement." But her final weapons misfired. Mr. Johnson stepped forward calmly. "My mother-in-law lies with us. My mother passed away 3 years ago. We still miss her." Mrs. Smith added, "I watch a couple of neighborhood kids. No money changes hands. We help each other." Mrs. Henderson chuckled. "My son grows heirloom tomatoes under lights. He's a chef." Karen's confidence crumbled as reality set in. Her so-called intel was worthless. But she had one more card to play. "You, Brandon Walker," she snarled, "I know the truth about James Miller. You weren't incompetent. You threw the case. You were paid off. I have proof." A heavy silence fell. Even Matthew looked unsure. All eyes turned to me. Before I could speak, James Miller stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, calm and clear, "I went to prison because a prosecutor withheld evidence. Mr. Walker fought for me every step of the way. He's helped me get back on my feet since the day I got out." He held up his phone and played video after video, each with a timestamp. ATM footage of me giving him cash 3 days after his release, followed by weekly clips for months. He didn't have to do any of that, but he did, because he's a good man. The room was dead silent except for the chime of live stream comments on dozens of phones. Karen looked around, eyes wide, realizing it was truly over. Her network, her power, her last shred of credibility gone. She dropped to her knees, sobbing. This time, they were real tears, not manipulation, just the raw grief of someone who had lost everything. "I just wanted to feel safe," she whispered. "After Richard left, after the breaking a broken bar, I just wanted to control something, anything. I needed to know everything, so no one could hurt me again." It was heartbreaking. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of pity. But consequences still matter. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitfield, you missed your court check-in. That's a violation of your bail. I have to take you back into custody." As he helped her up, she looked at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said. "I became the thing I feared most, someone who hurts others." And just like that, she was gone. The room erupted into a final wave of emotional release. Applause, laughter, hugs, and, finally, peace. Within a month of the federal racketeering charges, the company collapsed. Its assets were frozen, its operations dead in the water. It was a win, but not one that brought much joy. Hundreds of thousands had been impacted. The bigger question lingered: how many more companies were out there, quietly profiting off paranoia and division? 6 months passed. Willowbrook was healing. Jessica Park won the HOA presidency, running on a simple platform: transparency and minimal interference. The spy cameras were gone, replaced this time with actual birdhouses. Community meetings turned from battlegrounds to potlucks. As for me, I was back to practicing law, not full-time, not in courtrooms, but helping people who needed guidance. Emma and I started a nonprofit focused on privacy rights and legal education. Our first hire, James Miller, our living reminder that redemption is real. He led outreach for others like him, victims of systems rigged against them. The day Karen was transferred to a halfway house, I went, not because she asked it, but because it felt right. Matthew came too, and his sister flew in from Seattle. Karen looked different, healthier, grounded. The erratic energy had been replaced by something resembling peace. "I'm going to make amends," she said. "Real ones, not just words. I've started a blog on surveillance abuse, and once I'm allowed, I want to speak publicly, turn my story into a warning." It was a good plan, maybe even a necessary one. If anyone could deliver that message, it was her. A year later, I bumped into Karen, of all places, at Whole Foods. She was buying oat milk, avocados, and kale, the exact groceries that sparked the entire bizarre spiral. We locked eyes, glanced at our carts, and burst into laughter. "Still copying my shopping list?" she teased with a grin. "Actually," I smirked. I switched to almond milk, gotta stay unpredictable. We talked for a few minutes. She was working as a victim's advocate, helping others navigate paranoia and privacy issues. Therapy had helped. Her kids were visiting again, and in her own words, she was learning to live with uncertainty. As we parted in the parking lot, she called out, "Brandona, thank you for stopping me, for forgiving me, for showing up." I only nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Some of the most meaningful victories don't happen in court, they happen in grocery store parking lots, between people who were once enemies. But I thought our story had ended. It hadn't. My phone rang, an unknown number. I almost let it go, but something in me answered. "Mr. Walker, this is Special Agent Harrison with the FBI. We've found something in the data mine files. Your name came up and documents from before you moved to Willowbrook. We need to talk." Apparently, Data Mine Corp had known who I was all along. When Karen began watching me, it wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. At the FBI field office, Harrison laid out the documents. "Each one chilled me further. They had a file on you from the Miller case," he explained. "They encouraged Karen to investigate a new lawyer in the neighborhood. They knew her distrust of attorneys. They manipulated it." Karen hadn't gone rogue. She'd been activated, a missile pointed directly at me. "Why?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. Harrison pulled up a slide deck. "You weren't alone. They targeted 15 former attorneys, each one involved in high-profile cases. They built psychological profiles of people who had retreated from public life, people likely to isolate, people perfect for surveillance exploitation. You were part of an experiment. I thought about the 2 years I spent hiding, ashamed, disconnected. If Karen had succeeded, if the neighborhood had turned against me, I might have disappeared into myself entirely. She saved me, I said. The irony hit like a brick. By being so completely wrong, she forced me to fight back, to remember who I am. Harrison nodded, and in doing so, you exposed their whole operation. The CEO flipped. Now we're investigating 12 more companies like it. I left the office with a strange blend of emotions, anger at being used, relief at surviving, and a summa of gratitude. Karen had sparked my redemption. A month later, Willowbrook held its first annual Privacy Rights Festival. It sounded absurd, but it worked. Booths taught digital security, lawyers offered free legal advice, and kids learned about boundaries and consent. Jessica Park organized it. The whole community pitched in. Even Larry Goodman had a booth offering tax advice now that he passed continuing education courses. The keynote speaker, Karen Whitfield, she stepped up, and no longer the commanding HOA president, but a woman with hard-won humility. I stood in bushes, she began. Nervous laughter swept through the crowd. I hid in actual bushes. Watching my neighbor buy oat milk, I told myself it was about safety. But fear makes us do terrible things. It makes us see enemies in neighbors. It makes us build prisons out of our own minds. Her speech was raw and painful, but honest. Some cried, some nodded. I gave a talk to about guilt, the Miller case, the courage it takes to admit you were wrong. James stood next to me, proof that redemption isn't fiction. We all have our bushes, I said, places where we hide. Karen's were literal, mine were internal. But we can choose to come out. We can choose connection over fear. The festival was a hit. The local news called us the community that fought back against fear. 6 months later, I got another call. A major law firm wanted me to lead a new division that focused on privacy rights. We need someone who understands the human cost, the managing partner said. Someone who's lived it. That's you. I took a week to think, consulted Emma, James, even Karina over coffee, one of our occasional check-ins. Eventually, I said yes, but I kept the nonprofit going, because balance matters, connection matters. Karen finished her sentence and became a full-time advocate. She spoke at HOA conferences. Her talk, From Bushes to Bridges, How Fear Destroys Communities. She wrote a book and donated the proceeds to privacy groups. The last time I saw her, Whole Foods again. We reached for the same oat milk carton. You first, she said. I insist, I replied. We ended up chatting in the cafe till the copyright. Two unlikely friends shaped by one ridiculous, terrifying, transformative journey. Do you ever think about how absurd it all was? She asked. The bushes, the grocery stakeouts, Larry pretending to be a criminal lawyer. Every day, I said. But the absurdity brought clarity. Your paranoia uncovered a national conspiracy. My guilt found a purpose. And the neighborhood found its heart. She smiled. No walls, no performance, just a real smile. I spent so long watching life from the sidelines, she said. Now I'm trying to live it. It's harder, but it's worth it. As I drove through Willowbrook's quiet streets, I thought about how far we'd come from being watched through cameras to watching out for each other, from lawsuits to laughter, from isolation to community. The HOA still exists here, but now it organized block parties, not surveillance patrols. Somewhere, data mine executives were learning that when you turn neighbors into spies, there are consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. New case. Texas wants DNA samples from dog owners. You in? I smiled and typed back. On my way. Because that's what we do now. We fight the absurd. We protect the vulnerable. We step out of our bushes and into the light. And sometimes we buy oat milk without triggering a federal investigation. Though I always keep the receipt, just in case.